I never thought my own family would push me into a corner where I had to choose between my freedom and my dignity. But that's exactly what happened. The night everything exploded, my mom stood there with her arms crossed. My dad avoided eye contact like he always does when he knows he's wrong. And my sister, my unbelievably lazy sister, just smirked like she had already won. And in that moment, when they told me that I either had to babysit her kids for free every single day or start paying full rent within the week, something inside me snapped. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I just nodded slowly, walked back to my room, and decided right then that I had only one option left: to leave without saying a single word. But here's the thing I keep asking myself. Was I wrong for doing that? Tell me honestly, because I still can't tell if I was protecting myself or betraying the only family I've ever had. You know how people say, home is where the heart is? I used to believe that. I used to actually feel safe under that roof. But somewhere along the line, everything about that house, my room, the hallways, even the kitchen where I grew up stealing snacks, became a trap. And it's not even because of my parents directly, it was my sister, Emily. Older by 4 years, mother of 2, dramatic enough to win Oscars for situations no one asked for, and the queen of playing victim about problems she created herself. I swear, if laziness was an Olympic sport, she'd have multiple gold medals, sponsorships, and her own highlight reel. And somehow, despite everyone acknowledging her laziness at some point, I was always the one expected to help her out. Mom's favorite excuse was, "You're the younger sibling, you should support her." Dad's excuse was, "I don't want drama in the house, just do it." And Emily's excuse, well, she didn't bother with excuses. She just acted like I was her personal nanny from the day her kids were born. But the real story doesn't start with that final confrontation. It starts way earlier, before the bitterness built up inside me, before I realized I was basically being used. It starts when I moved back home after college. I graduated with a degree in digital design. But getting a stable job in my field was harder than I expected. So to save money, I moved back in with my parents temporarily. I was paying a small rent, contributing to groceries, doing chores, helping around. It was all fair. They were supportive at first, or at least that's what I believed. But everything changed when Emily moved back home too. She hadn't planned anything. She hadn't saved money. She hadn't tried to manage her life. She just packed her kids. Ethan, who was 6, and Mia, who was 4, brought all her stuff into the house and announced dramatically that she couldn't do it alone. No explanation, no accountability, just drama. And of course, my parents didn't hesitate to let her live with them rent-free. Not just rent-free, effort-free. She didn't cook, she didn't clean, she didn't take care of her own kids unless there was a camera or outsider watching. She slept half the day, then spent the other half scrolling on her phone. It got to the point where her kids would come into my room early in the morning because Mommy was sleeping and told us to ask you for breakfast. At first, I tried to be understanding. I really did. I thought maybe she was overwhelmed, maybe she needed emotional support, maybe she was going through something I didn't know about. But nope, Emily wasn't overwhelmed, she was over-relaxed. She had no job, no responsibilities, and apparently no shame. And guess who slowly became the unpaid babysitter? Me. Every other day, Mom would tell me, just watch them for a few hours, and those few hours turned into entire afternoons. Emily would disappear and come home whenever she felt like it. Once, she actually left the house for almost 7 hours without telling anyone where she went, leaving me with 2 kids who were hungry, restless, and full of energy I couldn't match no matter how hard I tried. When she finally walked back in, she had a smoothie in one hand and a shopping bag in the other, and all she said was, "Thanks, I needed a break." A break from what? She wasn't lifting a finger. And it wasn't like I was sitting at home doing nothing. I had freelance projects, online classes, and job applications piling up. Every hour I spent chasing kids around was an hour stolen from my career. But every time I tried to tell my parents that it was too much, they shut me down. My dad would say, "Your sister is struggling, be compassionate." My mom would say, "It's just temporary, she needs your help." Temporary. She had been relying on everyone but herself since she was a teenager. That wasn't temporary, that was her lifestyle. The breaking point came when I finally got an offer for a part-time remote design job. It wasn't much money, but it was a foot in the door. I was excited, like genuinely excited for the first time in months. I told my parents about it, and they congratulated me. But instead of asking how they could support me, my mom said, "Well, now that you'll be earning a bit more, maybe you can help us by watching the kids in the mornings while Emily runs errands." Errands. That woman had more errands than the president, and somehow all of them happened during the same hours I needed to work. One morning I had a scheduled client call. My first real client meeting. I told everyone in the house to please not interrupt me. I locked my door. I even put a sticky note outside that said, "Meeting in progress. Please don't disturb." Not 2 minutes into my call, I heard knocking. Soft at first, then louder. Then louder. I tried to ignore it, praying whoever it was would go away. But nope. The knocking turned into banging. My client paused and asked if everything was okay. I wanted to sink into the floor. I muted my mic and whispered angrily, "What?" expecting one of my parents. But it was Mia saying, "Mummy said you need to give us snacks. She's sleepy." I opened the door and saw her standing there holding an empty cereal bowl. Right behind her was Ethan, stomping his foot because he wanted chocolate milk. I wasn't angry at the kids, they were innocent. But Emily, I swear in that moment, I felt my patience evaporate like water in a frying pan. I looked into her room across the hall. She was literally under the blanket scrolling on her phone. She didn't even look up when she heard me. I whispered, "Emily, I have a meeting." And she just waved her hand lazily and said, "I'll take over later. I'm exhausted. Just feed them something quick." Feed them something quick. I was seconds away from losing a client because of her. That incident alone put me behind on work, and the meeting went terribly because I kept getting distracted. I felt humiliated. Later that evening, I confronted my parents about it. I told them I couldn't keep babysitting. I told them I needed time and space to work. I told them Emily needed to take responsibility for her own kids. I wasn't rude. I wasn't dramatic. I just stated the facts. But instead of supporting me, my mom told me I was being selfish. Selfish for wanting a career. Selfish for wanting personal boundaries. Selfish for not choosing to sacrifice my future for my sister's comfort. My dad didn't say much. He just kept looking at the TV like the football game was more important than the conversation about my life. From that point on, everything got worse. Emily started guilt-tripping me. If I didn't watch her kids, she'd make comments like, "You're so lucky you don't have responsibility. You don't know real life." If I said no to helping her, she'd stomp around loudly so everyone knew she was stressed. My mom began waking me up in the mornings and saying, "Emily needs to run errands again. So don't make plans today." I felt like a prisoner in my own home. And then, one night, everything escalated into the confrontation that changed everything. I had spent the entire day working and watching the kids because Emily claimed she had a migraine. She spent the whole day on TikTok. I finally confronted her quietly after dinner, telling her that I wasn't her nanny and that she needed to step up. She blew up, yelling loud enough for the whole house to hear. She accused me of being dramatic, lazy, inconsiderate, and jealous. Jealous, because mom and dad trust me more with responsibility. What responsibility? She didn't do anything. My mom rushed into the argument immediately and, instead of stopping her, she sided with her. She told me, "Your sister is a mother of 2, she's overwhelmed. You're young and single, you have time to help." Those words broke something inside me. Then came the final blow. My dad said, "If you're not contributing to the family by helping, then you need to contribute financially. From next month onward, you'll pay full rent 60-50. I stared at him, shocked. I was already paying 200. He told me it wasn't fair that Emily paid nothing and I still refused to help. I said, "Why doesn't Emily pay rent then?" Silence. Complete silence. Then Emily said, "Because I have kids." As if that alone made her royalty. When I walked to my room that night, my heart was pounding so loudly I could almost hear it in my ears. I kept replaying their words. Selfish, unhelpful, unfair. How could my own parents see me as the problem? How could they expect me to sacrifice everything for my sister's mistakes? That night I sat on my bed with my laptop open, staring at the wall. I didn't cry, I didn't rage. I just felt numb. Slowly, the numbness turned into clarity. If they wanted me to be responsible for Emily's mess, then fine. I'd take responsibility for my own life instead. And here's the part where the story takes a turn. Before I tell you what happened next, I want to pause and ask you, what would you have done in my shoes? Would you have stayed and let your family use you until you had nothing left? Or would you have done what I did, something they still haven't forgiven me for? When I finally made the decision to leave, it didn't feel like rebellion, revenge, or some dramatic gesture people make in movies. It felt like survival, quiet, steady survival. After that night, when my parents told me I had to babysit my sister's kids or pay full rent, I didn't sleep. I just lay there staring at the ceiling, hearing their voices echoing through my head. Selfish, unhelpful, unfair. Words that felt like knives carving little wounds into my chest. I kept thinking I work, I clean, I pay rent, I mind my own business, and somehow I'm still the villain. Somehow I'm the one ruining the family dynamic. The more I replayed the whole conversation, the more I realized they didn't want a discussion. They wanted obedience. They wanted me to sacrifice myself again and again without complaint. And Emily, with her smug little smile and her blanket wrapped around her like a queen, knew she had won the moment our parents backed her. But she didn't know me as well as she thought. She didn't realize that the quieter I get, the more I'm already planning something. And that night I made my plan. The house was silent, everyone was asleep. Even the kids, who usually woke up whining for water or nightmares, were quiet. I sat there on my bed scrolling through apartment listings, room rentals, anything I could afford. I didn't have much saved. Maybe enough for a deposit and a month of rent if I budgeted tightly. But I didn't care. I would rather live in a shoebox-sized room with peeling wallpaper and a leaky sink than stay one more day in a house where I was treated like a servant. I found a listing for a small studio about 30 minutes away. Nothing fancy, just a kitchenette, a bed and a window facing a brick wall. But it was mine, and that alone made me feel like I could breathe again. The next morning, I acted like everything was normal. I got up, made my coffee, and sat at the table while my parents and Emily pretended the previous night's argument hadn't happened. That's how things usually went in our house. Sweep everything under the rug and hope no one trips over the lump growing underneath. Emily barely looked at me. She was too busy complaining that her daughter had colored all over the wall again. Mom was wiping it with a sponge half-heartedly while saying, "She's just creative." And I thought, of course, any problem related to Emily had an excuse ready-made, but when I had a meeting interrupted, I was selfish. I didn't bring up the rent. I didn't bring up the babysitting. I didn't bring up anything. I just mentally counted down the hours until I could call the landlord of the studio apartment and ask to tour it. That silence must have confused them, because Emily asked me, "So are you going to watch the kids later or what?" I just said, "I have work to do today." And for the first time ever, I didn't feel guilty for saying it. Later that afternoon, while they were all distracted with their own chaos, I slipped out and went to see the studio. The landlord was an older woman who wore thick glasses and smelled like laundry detergent. She warned me that the building was old, the pipes made noises sometimes, and the heat wasn't the strongest in winter. But I didn't care. It was clean, safe, and affordable. The second I stepped inside, I felt like I could finally unclench my shoulders. I told her I wanted it. She asked, "When are you planning to move in?" And I said, "As soon as possible." She shrugged and said, "Tomorrow, if you want. The last tenant already moved out." Tomorrow. The word rang in my head like freedom. When I got home, I kept my face blank. I didn't want to give anyone even a hint of what I was planning. If I did, they'd try to stop me, manipulate me, guilt-trip me, or blow things out of proportion. So I acted normal. I ate dinner, I went to my room. I packed my suitcase in the quiet of the night, folding each piece of clothing slowly, deliberately, feeling lighter with every item I put away. I packed my laptop, my documents, my art tablet, some toiletries, a couple of books, and not much else. I wasn't planning to take furniture or shared items, just my things. It didn't take long. I guess you realize how little you truly own when everything fits into 2 suitcases and a backpack. As I zipped the last suitcase, I paused. My room looked empty, almost sad. The posters were gone, the bookshelves were bare, the desk was cleared off. For a second, a part of me considered leaving a note. Something like, "Thanks for everything, I'm moving out. Don't worry about me." But then I remembered the way they cornered me, the way my mom said I was selfish, the way my dad refused to defend me, and the way Emily smirked. No, they didn't deserve a letter. They didn't deserve closure. They deserved to wake up and realize that the person they took for granted had finally walked away. When morning came, I woke up earlier than everyone, took a shower, got dressed, and carried my luggage down the stairs as quietly as I could. I didn't even eat breakfast. I didn't want to risk waking the kids or anyone else. As I reached the door, I hesitated for only a moment, just long enough to acknowledge that this was it. This was the moment everything changed. Then I stepped outside, closed the door softly behind me, and walked away. The Uber driver helped me load my suitcases into the trunk. I kept looking back at the house, waiting for someone to burst out the front door yelling my name. But no one came. I got into the car, shut the door, and exhaled deeply. It felt like I had been holding my breath for months. When I arrived at my new studio, I didn't burst into tears or celebrate dramatically. I just stood there, staring at the space that was now mine. I placed my luggage against the wall, sat down on the bed, and just stayed still for a long time. For the first time in forever, no one was calling my name. No one was knocking on my door. No one was telling me to watch the kids or help with chores or sacrifice my time. It was silent. And the silence was beautiful. But of course, peace never lasts long when drama is your family's specialty. A few hours later, my phone started blowing up. Missed calls from Mom. Missed calls from Dad. Missed calls from Emily. Then the text messages started coming in like rapid fire. Where are you? Why aren't you home? We need to talk. This isn't funny. The kids are confused. You better not be causing problems. I didn't reply. I wasn't ready. I spent the rest of the day unpacking, cleaning the studio, setting up my workspace, and trying to finally relax. But the next morning, they escalated. My mom texted me a wall of messages saying, "We woke up and you weren't here. This is irresponsible. You have no right to just leave without talking to us. Your sister needs help. Your family needs you. You can't just run away when things get tough. We expect you to come home immediately." My sister followed up with, "Stop being dramatic and get back here. You owe us communication." I actually laughed out loud at that one. I owed them communication. The same people who didn't listen when I communicated my boundaries. The same people who told me I had to babysit or pay full rent. No, I didn't owe them anything. I ignored them for another day. Then, on the third day, they showed up at my studio. I heard the banging on my door before I even had a chance to sip my morning coffee. I froze. My studio had a peephole, and when I looked through it, I saw all three of them standing outside, my mom, my dad, and Emily, arms crossed and faces twisted with irritation. They had actually tracked down my address. I opened the door only halfway and said, "What are you doing here?" My mom pushed forward, trying to force her way in, but I blocked the door with my foot. I said, "You're not coming inside. Say what you need to say from there." My mom started, "How dare you leave like this? Do you have any idea how worried we were?" I said, "You weren't worried. You were angry I stopped being useful." She gasped as if I'd slapped her. Emily rolled her eyes and said, "Can you stop being dramatic and just come back? I have an appointment today and I need you to watch the kids." That sentence alone told me everything. She hadn't learned a thing. They still didn't get it. I said, "I don't live there anymore. I'm not your babysitter. I'm not your maid. I'm not your punching bag." My dad finally spoke. "You could have at least told us." I said, "Every time I try to tell you something, no one listens. So I made a choice that benefits me for once." Emily scoffed, "So you're abandoning your family?" I said, "No. I'm removing myself from a situation where I'm mistreated." My mom said the most shocking thing of all. "We didn't mistreat you. We just asked you to help your sister." I said, "You didn't ask. You demanded. And when I said no, you punished me financially. That's not love. That's manipulation." My dad's face tightened. He wasn't used to me talking back. "Emily said you're overreacting. You were just mad and ran away." I shook my head. "I didn't run away. I walked away. There's a difference." Then my mom delivered her final blow. "If you don't come home today, don't expect us to support you anymore. Don't expect to be part of this family the same way." I looked her dead in the eyes and said, "Good. Maybe that's what I need." Their faces fell. For once, they realized their words didn't hold power over me anymore. My mom muttered something about me being ungrateful. My dad sighed heavily. Emily made some sarcastic comment under her breath. But they all eventually walked away. And when the hallway fell silent again, I closed my door and leaned against it, shaking, but not from fear, from relief. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Adjusting to living alone was harder than I expected. The quiet felt strange at first, like I was waiting for someone to knock on my door or yell my name. But I got used to it. I started sleeping better. I started focusing more on my work. I got 2 new clients. I decorated my studio with plants and wall art. I cooked meals that belonged to me and only me. I started to feel like myself again. My parents didn't reach out much after that visit. Just occasional messages like, "Hope you're okay," followed by passive-aggressive lines like, "Your sister is struggling without your help." I didn't reply to those. Emily tried guilt-tripping me once by texting, "Ethan cried because he misses you." But I knew she was using her kids as leverage, so I ignored that too. Eventually, about a month later, my mom sent the message I had been expecting. "Wu realize now that maybe we relied on you too much. We're still adjusting to things, but I hope you'll come visit sometime." It wasn't an apology, not really, but it was a crack in the wall. A tiny one, but a crack nonetheless. I didn't respond right away. I wanted to heal. I wanted to make sure I wasn't going back into the same cycle of being used. And it took time, but eventually I did go visit. Once. Not to move back, not to babysit. Just to show that I wasn't abandoning them. I walked in calmly, talked politely, didn't engage in Emily's drama, and left when I felt ready. And for the first time ever, no one demanded anything from me. No one handed me the kids. No one expected me to clean. I was treated like a guest. Maybe because they were scared I'd disappear again. And honestly, that visit told me everything I needed to know. My leaving didn't destroy the family. It didn't break anything. It simply forced everyone to adjust. Emily eventually found a part-time daycare to take the kids because she had no choice. My parents realized babysitting wasn't my responsibility, and I learned that sometimes the only way to make people respect your boundaries is to walk away until they learn how to treat you. So now looking back, I feel proud. Not guilty, not ashamed. Proud that I saved myself. Proud that I didn't let guilt keep me trapped. Proud that I built a life that belongs to me. But I still want to ask you, because sometimes, late at night I wonder about it, was I wrong? Was I wrong for leaving quietly without warning? Was I wrong for choosing myself over my family's unfair expectations? Tell me honestly. Would you have done the same thing? And if you made it this far into the story, thank you for listening to my chaos. If you were on my side through all of this, like this video because your support truly helps more than you know. Subscribe for more stories like this, stories filled with drama, real emotions, and the kind of family mess most people won't admit they deal with. And share your final thoughts in the comments. I really want to know what you think about everything that happened. I'll see you all in the next story.